Hey everybody, I'm Suzanne, and in today's video, I'm going to show you what happens if my students have to reschedule for whatever reason, and I all of a sudden have like a play date. I paint, and I wanted to do something small and quick, and something that I just wanted to do. This was a for me kind of painting, and so I'm going to show you the painting, and it is that of a little Hereford calf. Now, this was so much fun for me, and I don't get to paint this sort of thing very often, and I really enjoyed painting this little guy. I really, really did. And so in today's video, I'm going to take you along from beginning to end, start to finish, step by step, through the palette that I chose for this particular painting, how I got, the sketch, and how I did this, all together. So thank you for joining me, and if you are my subscribers, as always, thank you so much, and if you're not, consider subscribing, and know that I also have a membership program that you might be interested in. So if you're looking for a little bit more painting mentorship and coaching, check out the top tier, and I can do critiques of your work and help you along in your journey as an artist. So let's go ahead and jump into today's video of the little Hereford calf. Sometimes when my students have to cancel for some reason or another, it gives me an opportunity. I got a 2-hour opportunity to paint something. And oftentimes this time of the year, I'm painting something for somebody else. And this time I just wanted to do something fun. So this substrate is a super, super slick, lightly gessoed panel. And so it's super, super slick. And I just felt like doing a calf. Now, here in East Tennessee, we have a lot of Hereford, Angus, and Angus Hereford crosses called Baldies. I just wanted to do a little Hereford calf. And so the paint that we have today for our little calf painting is King's Blue, Ivory Black. These are all, these are Michael Harding. This is Cadmium Green, which is Blue Ridge, Raw Umber, Michael Harding. This is Venetian Red, and this is Burnt Sienna. These are both Michael Harding. Interesting, this is called semi-opaque, and this is semi-transparent. So it kind of makes you wonder, well, what's the difference there? But we're gonna play and see. I'm thinking that this is a bit more opaque than the Burnt Sienna. I have Cad Yellow, which is Winsor Newton. This is Yellow Ochre, happens to be Blue Ridge. This is transparent brown ochre, Michael Harding. Now these three colors are flash colors from the Charvine collection. So I have they're portrait tints that they have. They're tones and tints from the Charvine. Titanium White, Winsor Newton. I have, these are Mars Red and Mars Violet, and they are Blue Ridge paints. So I want to keep this super subtle, super easy, super loose, super fun. This is like only a 6x8. So that's very small for me, and I just really wanted to play today. So let's go ahead and have a play date. Since I'm really not certain yet about the actual drawing that I did, I'm gonna make a couple grays. And I'm wanting these grays to be, I want them to be a little bit warmer. So I'm actually just taking a little of the King's Blue, Ivory Black, and a little bit of Yellow Ochre. It's very green. Obviously, you would think if you mix blue and yellow together, you would get a green. And I really want to warm it up, so I'm going to take just a little bit of this is the Mars Red, which is a very opaque color. So it instantly kind of makes that, you can see it's a little less green. And I just want, that's not a bad gray. And I'm looking this calf over, and I put the pinks the Charvine's flesh colors down because I think that they're going to make some really nice grays too. So I'm going to mix a little bit of that in there. So that's just taking a little, the opacity of the Charvine paints is pretty nice, so. I want to keep it pretty homogeneous with it as far as the colors. So I'm really looking them over. There is a lot of fun little pinks in here. And I'm going to take this color, titanium white. That is a pretty nice little pink. You see that in the ears, but it's really light. Just remember, this is a little calf. I should focus on the color mixing here for you. And yet, I know you don't normally see me doing a lot of color mixing prior to a painting, but because this is such a little painting, and this is smaller than I generally work, I felt like it was kind of necessary. You'll see the difference here. This is the Venetian Red, Michael Harding, with a little bit of titanium white. I wanted to see how it tints up, because it, so that's that. Now if I take the burnt sienna, and also tints up very similar color. It's a little bit more yellow, I guess. There's a little bit more yellow in that. I don't know, it's very similar to the Venetian Red tint. All right, I'm going to take the cad yellow, very little bit of it, a little bit more of the titanium white, now since I am working with so many yellows, I really should have some type of purple on here, and I didn't put any purple down. The only cool color I really put down was the blue and the ivory black. So I'm gonna have to add some. I have to add some. I put just a touch of cobalt violet down. Now I'm taking this yellow ochre titanium white mixture, and I'm just gonna take a little tiny bit of cobalt violet, and it pulls it down quite a bit. Now it neutralizes it. So the violet will always neutralize its complement yellow, and I like that better. Now, I want to also do a cad yellow, cobalt violet gray. And cad white. Now the cobalt in this does give it a little bit of a greener cast to it, but it's not too bad. I always ask, like, what does it need? I'm going to give it some more white. I can tell you, I'm going to quickly run out of white paint. That's not a bad gray. So, yeah, you're seeing me make... I'm going to put a little bit of black in that. A little bit of ivory black, and of course ivory black is a semi-transparent color. Oh yeah, that's better. That's a nicer. Now I may think the value may be a little dark, but we'll see. I'm going to play with this. So what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to go ahead and block in this calf as best I can. All right, so I'm just kind of looking the calf over again. And I'm going to go with this gray that I had initially made, and it's a very gray, just want to kind of make sure my shapes are correct. And I'm using a number 4, it's a red dot filbert. And there's a lot of other colors in here. So I want to save my whitest whites for later. And I can always see where I've got to pull things up a little bit. Use that darker gray that I had made. And interesting enough, this is actually too big a brush. So I'm going to switch to one of my pointed red dot number 2s. This is one of the miniature brushes.
And because I can actually see the bottom jaw a little bit better, it's gonna come out a little bit more, which is fine because I can, you know me, I generally morph all over the place here. And I'm using this darker gray that I made, and seems to be the nice brush for this job. I'm just giving him some texture in his hole. It's funny, I actually see some pinks in that gray too, inside the, I don't know why I do, but. So oftentimes when I'm starting a piece like this, I am squinting all over the place and I'm looking for direction. Where there might be highlights, that kind of thing. I'm looking for direction of light. So I can tell you I'm moving out a little bit more on this side, and I see kind of a yellow gray, which means I'm going to just take some more of this. Actually, I'm going to grab a little bit of raw sienna too. I did put some, when I put the cobalt violet down, I did put some raw sienna down. The cobalt violet is Winsor Newton, and the raw sienna is Michael Harding. And I'm putting this color in here. So sometimes when I'm doing a piece, I will, now that I'm actually looking at this animal, I'm able to see my errors in my sketch. So I will make my corrections as I move through it. And that may mean that this calf gets a little bit bigger, all that kind of stuff happens. And I don't want to get too bogged down here in some of the details yet. You can see if you look really closely, I tried to grid this. I'm not used to working this small. And I fail miserably at gridding. Now, there are artists that are great at that. They grid their drawings on. I am not very good at doing any preliminary drawings. I pretty much fly by the seat of my pants when I start a piece. I like the spontaneity that offers, but it also means you're subject to more errors. Now, I generally do a lot of corrections when I'm painting, but because this is such a small piece, I thought, oh, this is intimidating to me, is what it is. And that's why I like the challenge. Painting small is intimidating. There, I said it. All right, this ear is a lot pinker, and I'm just going to use the Portrait Pink by Charvine, and it just seems to be pretty accurate with this color. And I'm just going to kind of pop this in here. This seems to be a pretty opaque paint, which I think is why I'm going to love it. Actually, one of my students brought it in because she is working on doing portraits right now. And I had never used this particular paint before. I mean, I have Charvine paints, but I don't usually buy their, the portrait paints. And the colors were really beautiful. So if anybody's interested, you can use portrait pinks for things other than human portraits. But that was why I purchased it. And I have a feeling I'll be using it for a lot of other paintings. But I will say that for the size that you get in these little tubes, these Charvine paints, they are pretty small, and you might be better off mixing them, and not using them for, but this is a small painting. I'm not really that concerned about it. So, okay. Now I'm cleaning this little brush off, and I am putting a little bit more of that light green gray that I made. Pulling the head out a little bit more on this side. Of course, eventually there'll be some highlights in here. And this comes down a little bit, so I have that eye a little bit too high. And so there's a little, I'm just going to kind of suggest where this is going. A lot of this will be done later. Using our darker gray that I made. Just kind of playing with the texture of the fur, just the direction. I'm just kind of course I do have a reference that I'm looking at. Now there's a lot of light hairs too that are kind of in here, and I don't want to miss that. Okay, so I'm just looking for chunks to put in here. Some of our lighter grays. Of course, as I move through this piece, I will put the chunks on here a little bit heavier and lighten the value up, because I want this calf to look cute. They are cute, but you know, I want to stay true to the animal's nature here. Now I can't get too detail-y because I got to put the background in, but I just want to get everything kind of in the right area. Now sometimes, let's see, I see a little bit of this little peachy color here. It's very subtle, but I'm going to put a little bit more of the pink in it. So I'm looking. I'm looking for the sides here, looking for the, from here down. And I'm looking for where the eye actually goes. So I'm bringing this down, the jaw. So it's blending a little bit into my darker gray. And that's good. There is also lighter colors underneath. And I'm always looking where things are in relationship to other things. You've heard me say that before. So I'm looking, if I think that this is correct with the angle of the ear, I'm moving this down and looking at where the next... You have to know, I am not a math person. But sometimes this is sort of like math, right? Okay, I'm gonna put his little pink nose in. Now I'm looking at where this goes, and then this would be the peak, if you will. I have the beautiful little pink. And this kind of comes out a little bit more. There's a little bit of a darker area here. Let's see, and I'm getting that right there. So he's actually facing this way. It's coming towards us this way. He's not full, you know, so you only see more of this eye, less of this eye. So all his parts have to kind of match up too. So I'm gonna go in here with a lighter gray. I'm gonna lighten that up. Actually mixing some titanium white here. Now, let's put a little bit more of that darker gray in. That matches up to that eye, so we're putting that right there. Raw umber with a little bit of the Mars red. Now Mars red is very opaque, so I don't, and raw umber is very transparent, so I don't want a lot of the pigment. Just kind of very lightly putting this in here. This is kind of his lower lip, or I mean his lip to his little sweet little nose. Kind of comes down. put a little tiny bit of ivory black in there, just a tad. And this little brush is doing the trick. I may end up doing the whole painting with this one brush, we'll see. It's happened before, it doesn't happen often. Now the nostrils, I'm actually taking that same combination of ivory black and you know what, I can use a little Mars Violet in there too. I don't want to make anything black, really. There's very little blackness in this little calf, but I'm looking where this goes here. Now it's not as quite as dark there. Now you see there's a dark line here, and that is simply from the sketch, the drawing. So please forgive. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of the darker pink that I mixed earlier, putting a little bit more of the the Mars red, and just going right underneath here. Now there's going to be white, a lot of white, and I actually might use my paint scraper, folks, to get some of that off, because we are dealing with a small piece, and because you see a lot of the pencil lines, I don't want that to interfere too much. Paint scrapers are good. All right, I'm going to go with just straight. See, I got to be careful because I'm getting too light up front without actually having the background in, which is a big no-no for Sue. And I just want to kind of get that in there. All right, I know a lot of this correction can happen later, so I need to stop doing that. Back in with my lighter gray, kind of greeny gray, but I'll still end up getting lighter later. And that eye is more at this angle. So I'm taking this. Now it's funny, calves are cute, and I haven't been to a farm in a while. My degree's in agriculture, animal science, so a lot of my college life was spent with calves and cattle, but that's pretty much where it ended for me. I don't have cattle, never have, but I appreciate them. I love them. I think they're beautiful. I appreciate everything that they give us, whether it's through meat or milk, dairy products, whatever. I do appreciate these animals, and their hides, shoes. I like a good shoe. So anyway, I do appreciate these animals for all they give us, and I think that's okay. I think a lot of people get a little hung up on some stuff, and makes them uncomfortable to think about. The fact that we eat them, but that's how it is, Some people don't, some people, and that's fine. If they want to be vegan, that's quite all right. Now I'm taking a bluey gray, and I'm making just titanium white and a little bit of what is left in my brush, and I like to call that mother. Just mother color. It helps to keep, it's painting dirty, I guess, but it actually keeps for a homogeneous piece in some ways. So you can see it's like a kind of a cool gray. And I'm just kind of going in around this area here and doing some of the gray that I see here on this side of the calf. There's a lot of grays and different, and I see now that this is going to come down a little bit. This is his hoof. I had angled it a little too high. It's actually more level with this, so, and his little hooves, his little pink hooves are right here. I'm just going to suggest that for now because I got to get some of this background in. I also need to get some of his burnt sienna colors in. I'm going to switch brushes again. I'm going back to, where is this? Clean that off a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go in with very little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of oil just to kind of suggest where the other colors are going. I make sure my angles are correct. And it kind of bulges out here more. He's leaning into it. So you can see I'm outside of my pencil lines, and that's okay. Because sometimes the pencil lines are just there to suggest where things need to go. So there's a little bit of foreshortening here because his you know, his legs are kind of coming towards us, but I'm just kind of suggesting right. Okay, so for background, I just kind of have just a suggested background, but again, compositionally, I want to lead the eye to the calf, right? So I may have some stuff in this direction so that all my focus goes towards the calf. So this is where I play. First, I'm going to mix some very muted greens, and I'm going to take, and I start with, which seems like a strange color to start with, right, is the cadmium green. Now, it is a very, there's not a whole lot of subtlety to that color, but I am going to cool it down and lighten it up. I'm starting with that color, but I want to make my first pass of color, and it's still a little greener than I want it to be. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in it, a little bit more yellow ochre. And once I kind of feel like I have a good color, then I'm going to work on the values of it. So, and I'll save some of the brighter yellows and greens in the foreground. But for my background, since I got to get some of that in, I'm going to add some white now. I'll use some of that, add a little bit more white to it. Add a little bit more blue. And I'm using King's Blue. King's Blue is a nice opaque color. And it, yeah, see that nice. So right away you see they're basically in the same family of color, but I used a little bit more white and King's Blue to cool it down and lighten the value up. And so I'm grabbing, and so if it's too green, folks, what do? We add a complement. And since basically, you know, I could grab, I'm kind of reluctant to do this just because it's opaque, but I want to see what happens. It usually browns it down a little bit. Yeah. So I'm using a little bit of the Mars Red. See what kind of what I get there. And I used a little too much marsh red, folks, right there. Too much marsh red. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the cad green. And cad green has a stronger opacity. So I have two opaque colors, right, competing here. And it made it very yellow. But guess what? There's a lot of yellow in this too. So I'm going to go ahead and lighten that value up by adding titanium white. And that's okay. Actually, that was serendipitous. It just worked out. But it wasn't really because I was it wasn't because I was a genius here and made it happen. It's because I just got lucky. I'm going to add a little bit of King's Blue too. Just a little bit. Okay, that's better. So you see I've got these little array of colors over here, and I want to keep everything light. It's like this calf is in the sunlight. And I'm going to put some burnt sienna down here. Add a little King's Blue to burnt sienna. Nice. It does make a nice gray. I'm going to put a little bit more King's Blue. A little bit more burnt sienna. Let's move that color so I can move it off to the side here. It's actually a beautiful color. I don't know if folks, can you see the colors that I'm mixing here? This was the one I just did with the King's Blue and burnt sienna. I know sometimes it's hard to see the colors, but this is what I'm working with here, folks. You can see right there. I know there's a glare from the window here, but I'm trying to keep you guys able to see this. Now, like I said, I want to make my direction needs to go towards this calf. So if I had anything else like in the background, I could just make this all gray or this varying greens. But I kind of want to suggest that there's something, something leading the eye. So I'm going to give it a very kind of a, I'm going to switch my brush to something a little bit bigger, but still soft. Maybe I'm just going to switch to a number 4 Eclipse. I'm going to give it a gray sky, but I think I want something of mass up here. And I may actually have, I don't know, something that kind of goes in this direction. So, what's it going to be? I am going to take some ivory black. You know what I need? I need another, let's see what happens if I add green to it. Yeah, a little bit of blue. Now, I've got to add, well, let's see here. Let's see if I use the violet. Oh, yeah, maybe that's the color. So, because the cobalt violet, of course, has cobalt in it, and it makes kind of an interesting green. I just want something back here. And I'm going to suggest that there's like trees or something back in this area. And you can see that because the slickness of my panel. I like the ampersand panels, so they're nice. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that there's a horizon line back here, and I'm going to take a little bit more of the raw umber and pop that in there. Now, raw umber is very transparent. You know what? I'm trying to avoid using my blue. But guess what? Got it. I'm going to put a little bit more blue in because it is in the background. And I like ultraviolet blue. This is Blue Ridge that I've just popped down there. Obviously well used. And I'm probably going to have to order some more Blue Ridge paints before too long. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit more of that in it. Yep. That did it for me. So I've got this in here. And I'm not really, it may have to dry a little bit before I can really work it. And again, you remember I just said, I could have a fence or something that's, leading the eye to this area. I don't know. I'm just popping that down for the sake of popping something down. I need a bigger brush. Whoops. And I'm going to put in a sky. And again, I just want a very light sky. So it's basically titanium white with a little bit of blue, just to make it a gray back here. And I'm going right up to this area. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in there. Use a little bit of oil. It's about the only medium I really use unless I'm really in a hurry, and I might use liquid, but I generally don't. Liquid I use when I need to do glazing, or if I'm really short on time. If I have a commission and I know it has to get shipped and it has to be dry, etc. Oh, shoot, that didn't mean to happen. I must have had dragged my brush through. Let's take that right off. That was not a good mistake. Sometimes mistakes are good, and sometimes not so much. That was not one of them. All right, so I'm just going to pop this in, and I want that horizon line to be soft. Oh, I see what happened. I had used, instead of using my palette knife, I had used my brush, and it dirtied up my white, and that's what happened there. See? If you're nice and clean with your practices, then you won't make messes like I just did. All right, now I want to keep my values pretty soft, and I just kind of pop this right up to this point, and I am not going to blend with this brush because I want some more coverage. And I'm looking in the background, and I may just take a little bit of this green here. I want to keep it soft. And always add a little bit more white to it. And I can add a little bit more. Raw sienna. And with this color here. Oh yeah, that's good. You know, I just made those little lines. I really don't need those little lines here, but all right, so because I have this in here, and I kind of want to put a little bit of because this is not as soft as a I'm gonna have to go in with a softer brush. If I use a little red dot number 8. Okay. I want this to be really super soft. So I'm blending the edges just a little bit. So you can't really tell where one starts and stops. I want it to be super soft. And so I use a very light texture. I mean, I'm hardly putting any pressure on this brush. And that gives that nice soft blend. You see that, folks? You see the blend right here on this very edge? You want it to be soft. You don't want it to be intense. Now, it can be intense, more intense on the sides here, but I'm just, it helps it's what creates the the feeling of going off into the distance. Now, keeping your values cool and light in the background is really what's going to help you here. And I'm putting a little bit more. I just want to put a little bit of something in here. And just kind of, again, blending those edges almost so you can't tell. I want it to be super soft. So when I do this, there's almost no pressure on the brush. Now, blending values in this, you know, let's see if there's an Italian word, and if I can remember, it's what Da Vinci did. Scrumflow? It'll come to me here in a little bit. But it's knowing how to almost blur your edges so you can't tell. It's manipulating values so close that you can almost not tell where one starts and stops. And because I wanted to keep this super light, hopefully I'm going to achieve that here. Since I am working wet on wet here, you know, it's kind of harder. Let me get a softer brush. I want to get any of the, so when you're working with, trying to keep it super soft. Let me see what happens if I just, I just want it to be oh so soft. Now you can definitely see that there's a difference here, but I just want to keep it, I almost want to pull some of the light down into it. It's not going to work like that. And I'll just work it until I feel comfortable, like I've achieved what I want. I like how that looks. Folks are like, but I wanted to see her paint a calf. She's spending a lot of time on this background. What's up with that? Well, folks, this is a small painting. This is a 6x8. So I need it to look as nice as I can make it look. Because it's just as important, right? It's just as important as the rest of the painting. So what I'm doing, I'm barely touching it. I'm just kind of, I mean, pretend you're painting with your eyelashes, y'all. I am barely touching this substrate. Now, I am painting on this harder, you know, this, oh yeah, there we go. That's looking good. Since it is a slick substrate, you know, it does make it a little harder. Or does it? It may actually make it easier. In any case. I just want that, you know, and I may go back in and add some more color back here, but remember, I am not looking for this to be this really interesting background. Now, I want to kind of suggest that this area is all background and that this area in front is all foreground. So that means I've got to manipulate my values well. And again, I'm going to go in with a little bit bigger brush. And I'm trying to keep it pretty light back here. And I'm just going in with the cooler version, and I'm going to kind of suggest that this whole area is that light. You can see the green that I'm going for. It's the bluey, cool green. Now, as I work around this calf, I know I need to be able to make my values like I have to, because I want to backlight or have this calf somewhat highlighted. So I need to manipulate things a little bit. And I might need to bring that part of his back out a little bit. We'll see. Now I'm putting this down as my primary color, but I will work some other colors into it. And since I'm kind of having that whole going down, I want it to kind of go in this direction. I'm pulling this part of the background a little bit further down. Remember, got to lead the eye somewhat. You can see the transition is pretty soft. And I may have to get in here a little bit tighter. I'll switch brushes here a little bit. Just wanted to put this down. And I've got to look and see if I've got that angle correct on that hoof. And I think this is still coming down. Oh, it is. I got it there. I see it. I did bring it down. I'm going to lighten some stuff up in here. A little bit lighter and cooler. Remember, I will be highlighting the top, so I need the values to be somewhat darker around the calf's ears, around the side, etc. Okay, like where this is going. Like where it's going.
And since this is a super slick substrate, you can see it's a little streaky in the background, and that's normal. And so I will need to have a little bit more paint on to the background just so everything sticks. So I wanted to darken a little bit of the background around the light parts of the calf just so everything kind of stands out. And I'm using my handy dandy little paint scraper to just go ahead and create the light edges that will be there, basically since this calf is somewhat backlit. And I'm using the handy dandy little 279 series brush to kind of soften the streak. So you can see that kind of knocks it down a little bit and blends it just a little bit more. And again, using a softer brush like this little red dot filbert really does it works better, in my opinion, on a soft, on a slick substrate like this panel is. So I am using a lot of sables and a lot of red dots, which are red dot brushes are sable synthetics. So I'm grounding the calf now, and I'm putting the shadow where the grass will, he's laying in the grass in the field. So I'm just kind of popping in the dark values where I need to put them, and putting some grass in the background. Again, the same brush is doing all the job for me here. putting just a little bit of detail without really making a lot of detail in that shrubby grass behind the calf. You can see I have it's a little bit of a darker value, which shows out just enough with that lighter background of the way off in the background. So I have that cooler, lighter value in the background, and I've kind of intensified my value and warmed it up just a bit. And I keep bringing that calf out a little bit more, a little bit more. He is leaning into his left side there, and so I have to keep moving some of his weight over. But I'm really digging how this is coming out. I think it's got such a neat feeling, and I hope you are enjoying today's video. And if you are, give me a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. Now, I am using a pointed round. It's one of the small brushes in the Workbench Warrior brush set through Rosemary, and it's a handy dandy little brush. Sorry, it's shaking. I promise you it's not an earthquake. It's just me hitting my camera. So I'm starting to put some of the lighter values in. Like I said earlier, this calf is somewhat backlit, and I want to really capture the light that occurs here. And so I'm using that small little brush to just create the little bit of detail, and putting in the dark values and blending it. I didn't necessarily want the paint around the ear to be impasto, but it sometimes works out that way. Since this is actually a pretty small piece, this is only a 6x8, which is very, very small for me. I would consider this actually a miniature, and that's why I ended up putting it in a really big fine frame. But you can see the added impasto paint here does offer some texture, because the fur on this calf would be somewhat thick and woolly, and I like this. This is fun. So anytime I can create a darker background for the light to shine up on, I do. And so you can see I just darkened the grass behind the calf's head so that you can really see his lighter features. Again, with my handy dandy paint scraper, I'm actually elongating his hoof there. His leg is somewhat foreshortened, and because it's coming straight at us. So he's got kind of white there, but then his little hooves are right there at the end. So I'm popping everything in. I'm trying to get it in so that it all makes sense. So he's sitting down in the grass, and his hooves are kind of a nice pink color. And so I'm kind of just, then I'm grounding everything, putting in some of the darker values in the grass, because he's kind of pushed it down. He's laying down in the grass. So I have to put all this dark in here. And I call it grounding. So I'm basically grounding my calf here. Now, I'm pretty much coming down to the end here. I'm looking, and you can see I've elongated the ear a little bit more, using that paint scraper, putting in whatever I need to do to finish this piece up. And so I'm starting to lay in the fur. You can see, now he's becoming a furry little calf, and everything's kind of coming together here at the end. And I'll go in a little bit more impasto in some of the areas, and just having a ball with this painting. This is when I'm having the most fun on any painting. And so I'm putting in the foreground, and I've warmed up the colors in the foreground, signed it, and voila, it is done. Now, this is before I did a slight glazing on it to kind of tone down the background just a wee bit more. And with the glazing, I just used King's Blue and a little bit of medium just to kind of bring it down. And you can see this is brought down just a little bit more. And I just wanted to show that to you. And like I said, this is a very, very, very small piece for me. And, but it was a fun one. And here is the perfect little frame. Kind of brings it all together.
See, this was a fun piece for me. And I really liked keeping kind of the background color very subdued and homogeneous. There's very, I have a little bit more of a contrast in color up here, but really it was pretty subdued. Now, what I did do after this piece had dried was I did do a little bit of a glazing on the back just to lighten it up a little bit more, cool it down and lightened it up. And I used King's Blue and Liquid and just kind of went over the top just a little bit. So it's not something that you really notice, but that's what I did in the background just to subdue it. And then I was able to warm this up, bring it more towards the foreground and kind of give it a little bit of pop. But basically the calf is the star of the show here. So thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions whatsoever, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below and I'll get to it. And yeah, consider becoming a member of my channel and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. So from Kingsport, Tennessee, I want to say thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.